Hey everyone, Zach here. Welcome to the 51st lesson in this RTS tutorial series. In this video, we will handle the second part of our unit recruitment, in which we'll reduce resources based on the type of unit we're spawning in. Cannot believe we're at our 51st video and I have over 600 followers. I want to thank you guys for your support and your encouragement and your patience with me as I have had mistakes in this series I've had to clean up. And again, I just want to thank you all for being there and being a supportive community. I'd also like to remind people that I have a Discord, so if you have any questions you want to ask me directly, feel free to join the Discord and ask me there. You can find a link to it in the description. All right, enough of that. All that said, fire up your editor and let's get started. Alright, so here we are back inside of our editor. The first thing we are going to do is we're going to open up two blueprints that we need. So if we go into our buildings, go into our military and open up our training post. We'll just pin this up here now. And we'll get rid of the spawn unit, this check thing, and we'll leave it on the main event graph. Next, we are going to open up our player controller. So if we go to player and open up our player controller, and again, we don't need our max resources, we need our event graph. And we're actually going to be working on the event begin play, so I'm just going to leave it over here. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to create a new actor. And what this actor is going to do, just to show you, it's going to do something similar to what our spawn building preview here does. If we have an empty actor, then we can call certain things from it. We can store variables in there. But we need to spawn that into the game. So if we think about this logistically, when we have this building, when we're in play, and we want to reduce our reduce our resources based on what we're spawning in, we need to store the cost of these somewhere. So as I said, there's a few ways to do that. We can store the cost inside the buildings, or we can store it inside the units, but then we have to spawn in an empty unit, which is problematic and can cost a lot of computer resources. Alternatively, we can spawn in an empty actor that just has the unit resource information in it, and that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go into our units folder, and in this folder, we are going to create a new blueprint that will be our empty actor. So we're going to do blueprint class actor, and I'm just going to name this RTS underscore unit trainer. I'm going to open that up. And I don't really need to do anything in here. As I said, it's going to be empty, so we don't need anything in this viewport. I'm going to go to our main event graph. Actually, we don't need to do anything in here, but I'm just going to create my references and variables. So I am going to create a reference to my player controller. And of course, this will be of RTS player controller. Now, I'm not going to cast this anywhere. I'm going to pass the variable information into the actor. So to do that, as we've done with the UIs, I'm going to make this so I can change it. Yep, I'm still avoiding that word. And I'm going to expose on spawn. And the category I'm going to put this into will be references. Next, I'm going to create three variables. One will be my unit type, and then I'll have my wood and ore costs. So this will be unit type, and this will be the enum we created earlier. So unit, oh, why can't I find it? Enum. There it is, unit types enum. Sorry about that. And then two more, which will be our wood cost, and that will be a float. And then finally, our ore cost, which will also be a float. Sorry, I was typing float there instead of cost. All right, I'm going to compile and save this just so we have those ready to go. And I'm not going to put any default values in. I'm going to set them, however, with a new function. So create a new function. This will be set unit cost. Now, what's going to come into our set unit cost is our enum. So we're going to put on our input our unit type. So unit type, and this will be a unit types enum. And we're going to do a switch off of this. So switch on unit type. And then from here, what we are going to do is we are going to set our wood and our ore cost. So I'm just going to put one of these in, or one set of these in. There we go. And I'm just going to duplicate these with Control W down here. Plug that into engineering. Plug that one into harvester, and then finally into our support unit rule there. And I'm just going to set some default costs. Everything but the support will be a total of, everything but the harvester will be a total of 100 resources. So I'm going to start this one with 25, which means my ore cost is going to be 75. My wood cost on my engineer will be 50. My ore cost on my engineer will be 50. My harvester will be 25 and 25, so this one's the only one that's not 100. And my wood cost on my support will be 75. My ore cost will be 25. There we go. And I'm just going to drag off one of these, doesn't matter which one, and I'm going to put a return node in. And on this return node, I'm going to add in a reroute. And I'm going to plug all these execute pins into that reroute. I need to get this information out. So this information needs to come out of this function. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I am going to just pass it out on my return node. So I'm going to get my wood cost. I'm going to drag it as a getter. I could just add it in this way, but I prefer just doing that. There we go, wood cost. I'm going to do the same for my ore. I'm going to get it, and I'm going to pass it out like that. There we go. I'm going to compile and save. Now we have an actor that has the cost of our units. However, until that is spawned into the game, if I try to access this, I am going to get a read none, which is why you can't store the unit costs inside the unit, because the unit hasn't yet been spawned in. I mean, you can spawn the unit in and then reduce the resources, but if you have the resources early on and don't later on, you're going to end up reducing into the negative. Alternatively, as I said, you can spawn in an empty invisible unit somewhere, but that means it has all the AI features, everything else included, and you'll have to put breaks in, but still it's going to be checking that over and over again, and that's going to be resource, in terms of computer resource, intensive. So I like using this empty actor. Another easy way to do it is to store all of this information inside the training post. However, I like clustering things based on what they're doing, and this, to me, in my way of visualizing object-oriented coding or programming, doesn't fit into the building blueprint. It fits into its own class. So we need to spawn this empty actor in. And as I said, we're going to do what we did with our buildings. So let's go to our player controller, where we spawn in these empty actors. These are empty. They're just there to get the information. So what we're going to do is we're just going to sort of replicate what we've done before, and we're going to do spawn actor from class. There we go. And our class is going to be our RTS underscore unit trainer. And we'll take our empty transform, we'll just duplicate it instead of hunting it down in our construction variables. Plug it into there. We have our player controller reference there, and we want to set that to get a reference to self. And because there's no mesh, there's no need to worry about collision handling. I do, however, want to create a reference to this potentially for later use. And we'll do that right here. Actually, when I say later use, I mean later in this video. And that will be unit trainer ref. And again, this is a reference, so it's going to go into my references folder. There it is. All right, so now we've spawned in this new blueprint. Compile and save, by the way. So we spawned in this new empty class that has all of our resource cost for our units in it. We now need to get this information when we click the train unit button. So to do that, we're going to go to our training post blueprint now. and in here, where we're going to unhook everything from this recruitment button here. We aren't going to change anything in this set, so we're just going to move this all the way over here, and we're going to add stuff into this later on. Or sorry, we're going to add this back in later on. We have some steps we need to do first. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get our player controller. Now, we don't create a variable here. Remember, this is a child. In the parent, or actually in the parent's parent, we have the player controller ref already there. So if you right click and type player controller ref, you can get player controller ref. In our player controller, we have the information on our unit trainer. So we're going to get our unit trainer. And actually, you know what? Let's go back to our unit trainer. We don't need this enum. I don't know why I said we need that. Compile, save. We're going to pass the enum information in from our graph here. So off our unit trainer ref, we want to do set unit cost. And we're going to plug the execute in from the event recruitment trigger into there. And here on our unit cost, well, again, in the parent of this blueprint, we have a unit type enum already there. And we're going to get that. Remember, when we click the button inside our UI, it tells the building what to set this to. We pass that into there. It tells our trainer which one we want, and then it passes that information out at the end here. So what we need to do is we need to check, do we have enough resources? So let's put in our branch, because it's going to be a branch. All right. So I'm just going to move this a little bit further down because we have a couple of more nodes we need to put in. So let's create our check resources, which will be a pure function. So we're going to create a new function, which will be check resources. This, as I said, is a pure function. And going into it will be our wood, which will be a float. So this is the amount of wood we need, and the ore, the amount of ore we need. All right. We also need to get our player controller reference again. So get player controller, and we need to get our wood resources and our ore resources. So let's do wood resources. We want to get wood resource, put a reroute into there, and get our ore resource. All right. So now that we have this information, we want to compare what we currently have versus what we need. So you can do this neatly by creating some local variables, but I don't like doing that, especially in a pure function. It can lead to issues. I'm just going to pass the information in and check it. So I'm going to grab off of here, and I want to know, is this amount, the amount we have, equal to or greater than the amount we need? And same for the ore resource. I just hit Control W to duplicate that. So I'm going to take from the wood here, plug it into there, and I know this isn't going to be exactly neat, but we'll put the reroute in so it's a little bit neater. And I'm going to do the same on the ore down here. Let's line that up a little bit better though. And again, put that reroute in. There we go. Let's actually just move this down a tiny bit. Move that over as well. And raise that up. All right. Now, both of these need to be true. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put an AND in. There's our AND. And off this check resources start node, the input node, I'm going to put a return node. And I'm going to plug this AND into there, into that return node. And I'm just going to rename this return value as has enough. All right, compile that. Go back into here and get your check resources. Plug your has enough conditional statement in there. Plug your wood cost into there and your ore cost into there. Now we're going to drag this down a bit. Now, again, another thing we could do is we could create variables here where we set them. We'd have to reset them at the end. So I don't want to do that. I just want to have them ready to go. Just pass them through. So I'm going to put a couple reroutes in. And again, the reason why I'm doing that is because I'm going to need to get more information from on our wood cost and our ore cost. Not only do we need to have enough to do this, what we need to know is how much we need to reduce from our player controller. So I'm going to create a new function that will be reduce resources. Now, again, thinking about this from an object-oriented programming perspective, I have a similar function already in place for our buildings. I might want to, instead of doing it this way, have a set of functions in my function library that do the reduce resources, that do the check resources for both units and for buildings. So if you want a bit of a challenge, there is a similar challenge as last time. Go ahead and try to find another more object-oriented approach to doing this. Again, this series isn't meant to show you the best way to do it. It's meant to show you the logic. It's meant to teach the understanding of what we are doing and why we are doing it, or how to do it. Not the best approaches. And when people say, oh, this is the best approach or this is the best approach, let's be honest. There's a lot of debate about what the best approach is. And a lot of people don't really know how best to cluster their functions and how best to segment their code. Everyone's going to have a different opinion. And as the saying goes, everyone has opinions, just like everybody has a hole, and they all smell. All right, so let's add in 2 new inputs, and this will be our wood cost and our ore cost. Again, let's get our player controller. So get player controller ref. And we not only need our wood resource as a getter, we need it as a setter. So we are going to do wood resource get. We're going to put a lot of reroutes on this because we're going to take a lot of stuff from here. And we are going to remove from this wood resource the cost. So off wood resource target here, we want to do float minus float. And we are going to remove from it the cost of what we are building. Gonna put a reroute in just so it's a bit neater looking. There we go. And then we're gonna put off this, drag off this reroute, and we are going to do wood resource as a getter, so or setter, not getter. Set wood resource, and we're just gonna plug the execute pen into there. Drag this up here, and we're gonna just move things around a tiny bit. Put another reroute into this nice blue line off our player controller, and plug in the return value from our wood resource minus our wood cost into our set resources. So again, we're getting our current wood resources, we're getting the cost, we're finding the difference, we're setting our wood resource to the result of that difference, or to what the remainder of that difference is. We are then going to repeat this entire process again for our ore. So drag off of here and do ore resource as a getter. Put another reroute in. And off of here, actually before we do that, let's give it something we're going to plug into. So let's drag off of here and do a float minus float. And we already know it's going to be about up there anyway. Let's drag that about the same level as the other one. Let's drag off our ore cost, plug into there. We're going to put a reroute into this one and not drag off that reroute, and we're going to just move it there. And then off our nice little blue line down here, we are going to set our ore resource. Make sure you're getting the ore resource setters and not the maximum setters. There we go. Again, we're going to put another reroute into this just so it's a bit neater. And we're going to plug the execute pen in from our wood setter into our ore setter. And the value will be the difference of our ore resource and our ore cost. Plug that into there. And now we've reduced the cost on both our wood and our ore resources. Or reduced from our ore and wood resources the cost of that unit. We'll put a return in. Oh, that's the wrong return. Return node. There we go. So now that we have our return node in, we finish this function out. I said we now have set this. We actually haven't, because we haven't called this function into play yet. So if this is true, if we have our wood resources, if this is true, if we have our resources, what we want to do is we want to reduce those resources from our count. If you're doing an instant build, you can actually, let me finish this out and I'll finish that thought. So we're going to take from this wood cost off this reroute, plug that into there. There we go. And do the same with our ore cost. Just going to grab this and just move this down here. There we go. And then we're going to plug this into our increment pin there. Now, I mentioned that there are alternative ways of doing this. And I've said, if you're spawning in the unit, if you're training the unit, you don't have that unit already on the map, you can't reduce the resources. If you're not doing a training thing, so when I say a training thing, what I mean is if you don't have timed training, we currently have it set to 2 seconds. So every 2 seconds, it trains one unit. If you're instantly spawning in the unit, you can store the resource cost in the unit, and then when it spawns in, you can reduce the resource at that point. If the player doesn't have enough resources, you can then destroy the unit. So you can have the check and the reduce inside the spawner after the unit spawns. So in here, after we spawned it in, you can check, do we have enough resources? If so, nothing happens. If so, reduce the resources and continue on like normal. If not, destroy the actor we've just spawned in, which means you'll have to set a reference to that actor. It should be a local reference because it needs to be overwritten every time you spawn a unit in. There are problems with that in that you might end up destroying multiple actors by mistake. So I'm not entirely a fan of that approach. I still say having it separate, having your code clustered is the optimal way to do this. But again, as I said earlier, opinions are like a-holes. Everyone has one, and they all stink. All right, so this should work. Let's test it out, and if it does work, what we're going to do is we're going to add in something off our false here, just to make this a little bit easier to use. So just drag this out here so we have a bit of room in case it does work. I say in case. It should work. All right, let's hit play. Let's go to our building. And let's right-click it, and let's create a bunch of units. You can see it's reducing my resources. We now have resources. We can't train any more units. All right, and the units are spawning in. Awesome. So it's working. But let's take a look at something. Let's just see. When we put a factory in, let's find a slot where I can actually drop it in. It reduces my resource. I try to put another factory in. Insufficient resources. We should have something similar when we don't have enough resources to get another unit. So if we go to our player controller for a minute, let's take a look at how we did that. And let's see how we're going to replicate that. It's off our left-click command. So we're in building mode. And it checks. Do we have enough resources? If not, we trigger text. So what we're going to do in our unit, or a training post here, is we're going to get our player controller again. So just player controller reference. We are going to get a reference to our main UI, or our main HUD as I'm calling it. So get main, or get HUD main game. So that's our main UI. And then we have trigger text. There we go. This is what we need to activate if we don't have enough resources. I guess I need to move this further down, or further along. So let's move that further along there. There we go. And let's drag this into here. Okay, we're going to put a few reroutes in, just so it's easier to see what's going on. I thought I had enough room. Clearly, I don't. Again, remember, the reroutes are optional. It just makes it easier to read. And for the sake of these tutorials, I put them in so you can see what my thought process is. I'm just going to unselect that and just drag them a little bit further down. Drag that so it's not intersecting with it. There we go. That makes life a wee bit easier. In fact, I'm going to put a couple more reroutes in just because I don't like the way those lines look, and it's driving me crazy. There we go. Do the same down here. Just drag this down a bit. And I don't mind that one coming in like that. However, this is way too low. All right, I'm not going to get that on the line I want it on. Compile. Let's test this. Control S, save everything. And hit play. Go to your building. Oh, so someone pointed out that that's a bug. Yes, technically it is. I don't want that to happen, or I might want that to happen. If I don't want that to happen, all you have to do is when you open a UI is have it set the Boolean value in our player controller for our let's see what we called it. Is move disabled, I think? Or disable camera movement. All you got to do is set that to true, and this scroll issue will stop. All right. And if it doesn't, you need to add that bool value into the edge scroll. I don't think that really should matter, though. Let's test out this display. We're going to just keep hitting. All right, insufficient resources. There, it works. As you can see, it's spawning in units. There's another unit, and it's changing genders of the units nicely. If we seem to be getting pairs of genders out. Oh, no. Thanks for breaking that pair pattern. There we go. We have a whole bunch of infantry units we've now spawned in. Actually, these aren't really infantry units. They are just the unit masters. In the next video, what we're going to do is we are going to start setting up our specialty units, which means we're going to add in rifles to our infantry units so we know they're infantry units. And once that's done, we'll do the same things for other units. We'll add in other signs that they're different types of units. That way we can start programming in different functionality. So we're going to have our harvester units, we'll have infantry units, we'll have support units, and we'll have engineer units. And we get engineer units, which we actually might do first. Our engineer units will be the ones that can build and repair buildings. We'll also add into all our units health and armor bars so we can see when they're taking damage. We'll add those health and armor bars into our buildings so we know when to send units in to repair those buildings. All of that said, if you've liked this series, go ahead, or this video, go ahead and hit that like button down below. And make sure to hit the subscribe and notify icon so you know when the next tutorial is out. If there's a particular thing you'd like to see in this series that I have not mentioned that I'll cover, let me know down in the comments below. I know there are a lot of topics that people still want me to cover, like roads. That is something I'm still planning to do, don't worry. There's more on the AI we're going to do. But if there's something I haven't covered, let me know in the comments or join us in the Discord community and tell me directly there. And I'll endeavor to try to include that in this series or in an offshoot series. That said, I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that everything's making sense so far. And additionally, I look forward to seeing you in the next video, and I hope that you have a wonderful day.